brand new week. Welcome to this week. It's time to do business starting from today. 55 minutes of current and relevant business talks. That's what we do here on Business Morning. I'm Ini John McMahon, and we start business as usual from the global space where oil prices slipped on Monday, weighed down by Moody's downgrade of the U.S. sovereign credit rating and official data that shows a slowdown in the pace of China's industrial output and retail sales. Front-month Brent crude futures edged down, lost 51 cents. That's almost 1%. It's 0.8% for this morning. And the price is at $64.90 a barrel. Also for WTI, it's down 0.9%. at $62.04 a barrel, and that's about 45 cents shaved off from WTI. Now, both contracts rose more than 1% last week after the U.S. and China, two of the world's biggest economies and oil consumers, agreed to a 90-day pause on their trade war with sharply lower import tariffs. Now, Moody's downgrade has raised questions about the outlook for the U.S. economy, and China's data point to a bumpy road ahead for any economic recovery. This is the observation by analysts, and Moody's downgrade may not impact oil demand directly, but it does create more sober market sentiment. And Moody's downgraded the U.S. sovereign credit rating on Friday over the country's growing $36 trillion debt pile, a move that could complicate President Donald Trump's efforts to cut taxes. And then we come here to Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has approved all necessary regulatory licenses for the Coal Mine Integrated Development Project. And this is to boost oil production between Bauchi and Gombe states. During the groundbreaking of the Bauchi Oil and Gas Academy, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources highlighted the president's commitment to transforming Nigeria's energy sector for economic growth. The minister also stressed the importance of local capacity in managing and sustaining the industry, considering the country's vast fossil fuel reserves. He acknowledges the federal government's ongoing efforts to support technological innovation and human capital development through the Petroleum Technology Development Fund, the PTDF. And well away from that, but still around energy, preparations for the launch for the African Energy Bank is now in its final phase. And this follows a high-level review meeting in Abuja as the Minister of State, Petroleum Resources, Senator Heineken Lukobiri, hosted the President of Afrexim Bank, Professor Benedict Orama, and the Secretary General of African Petroleum Producers Organization, Dr. Omar Farouk Ibrahim. Senator Lukobiri promises that the AEB, that's the bank, the Africa Energy Bank, is poised to become a transformative financing platform for energy projects across the continent. This review confirms that every critical milestone is either being completed or on schedule, and that they remain fully aligned with the continent's partners. And many thanks to the President, according to Senator, for his support and commitment to seeing the project to fruition. He adds that the key legal and governance frameworks have been concluded, while capital mobilization discussions have recorded encouraging commitments from both member nations and private investors. The Senate Committee on Power has raised concerns over the liquidity crisis bedeviling the power sector, lamenting that the tariff shortfalls in the industry have indicated that the government owes about $200 billion to electricity generating companies every month. The committee disclosed that since this year, the government has not paid the power producers, and that this has raised the debt to about 800 billion naira. The chairman of the committee, Senator Inaya Baribe, disclosed this while fielding questions from journalists during a retreat that was held in Ikotekpene, Akwa Ibom State over the weekend. The retreat, organized by the Nigerian Electricity and Regulatory Commission, was to proffer solutions to critical and emerging issues in the power sector. Senator Baribe expresses worries that the government has yet to make any payment to the power firms this year, indicating that the country is already indebted by 800 billion naira, in addition to previous indebtedness amounting to over 3 trillion naira. About 300 beneficiaries of the Agricultural Support Program under the federal government Renewed Hope Initiative in Imo State have received agricultural input through the state government following a 2-day intensive training for participants and members of the Farmers Club for Students in Owerri, the state capital. Items distributed include seeds, fertilizer, pesticide, feed, farming tools, and other essential materials. The wife of the Imo State Governor, Chioma Uzodimma, who led the distribution exercise, emphasizes the objectives of the initiative and highlights agriculture's vital role in driving economic growth, reducing poverty, and ensuring food security.
These seminars equip participants with practical skills in modern farming techniques. The Farmers Club ignited a passion for agriculture among students, nurturing the next generation of farmers. The women and youth trainings empowered participants to embrace innovation and boost productivity. I applaud every participant for their commitment and eagerness to learn. Today, we take a bold step forward by distributing agricultural inputs to our beneficiaries. These resources are catalysts for transformation, tools to enhance productivity and create sustainable livelihoods. To our beneficiaries, I urge you to use them diligently, share your knowledge, and inspire others in your communities. By empowering women and youth, we are fostering entrepreneurship.
Back, it's still Business Morning here on Channels Television. Now, late last week, we got the news that the European Bank for Development and Nigeria is now officially a member of the European Bank for Development and formally admitted as a member of that bank, Reconstruction and Development Bank. And this is supposed to mark a significant step towards boosting private sector access to international capital and supporting the country's long-term economic transformation. Let's find out what this means for us in Nigeria, especially the private sector, since that seems to be the major focus here. And we have the managing partner at Escrow Wealth Investment, Mr. Ayodeji Onigbogi. Mr. Onigbogi, good morning and welcome to the program.
It's my pleasure being here. Morning.
Great. So, I mean, sometimes we just have this celebration of Nigeria being part of different bodies. So what does this mean, really, being a part of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development?
Well, for Nigerians, at least Nigerians in the private sector, it's a good development. They will access funds that are cheap because, you know, our local funds are much more higher. We're doing about, even our MPR is doing 20-something%. But when you get access, when you're able to access foreign loans, you could get as low as 5-7%, single digits. And when you're looking at such loan, it will be long-term. So it's a welcome development. But it will basically for people in sectors that are mineral resources, agriculture, infrastructure, and probably financial institutions.
So these are, because, I mean, especially if you talk of mineral resources,
yes, oil and gas,
agriculture. I mean, these are two majors that Nigeria is seeking to diversify the economy too. So, I mean, if this funding is available to businesses in this area, then that should make impact on the economy.
Yeah, it's a plus because, you know, when you're looking at for such body, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, they will use access a long-term fund. When I say long-term fund, we are talking of 5-10-year funding that will be guaranteed by either a Nigerian bank using the sovereign, Nigerian sovereign, as the main trust. But what we should look at is for people that are seriously minded in the private sector, is a welcome development. And I will expect everybody at this time to get their private consultant, people to talk to banks to see how they can access such funding. Because as we speak, European Bank for Development, since it was created in 1991, up to date, they've expended loans as high as 220 billion euros. But majorly for Africa, for European countries, some Asian countries, and the North America.
So now perhaps we'll have Africa joining that, represented by Nigeria.
Just like when Nigeria was are absorbed in February because they have to process several documents. After Nigeria was absorbed, other countries were absorbed. Cote d'Ivoire and Benin, our neighboring country, they too were absorbed into. Those are the 3 African countries that are joined as we speak, while others are still looking at how they can be a party to where they can benefit from the relationship they want to have with the European banking.
So, you know, a lot of times what we find is that there are these platforms, an avenue for funding and other benefits for businesses, but they are hardly tapped. First of all, maybe because of lack of information being driven down to those who really need it. And then the other one would be accessibility. You just talked about it's for private sector, but they need the backing of banks.
Normally, it's natural. If you want to access any fund, even microfinance, you go through a microfinance bank. So if you want to access international funding, you go through either your local bank or bank of industry. You go for a local bank. Because when you want to transfer funds, they will not transfer funds to your account directly in euro. So they will transfer to your local account. So all the processes, the function that you have to do with a bank, probably it will involve Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, because these are documentations that involve national sovereignty.
But that's the fear that comes in, the bureaucracy that will come in.
Yeah, there will be bureaucracy, but have they given it a trial? Because normally this is not a Nigerian fact whereby you feel that, oh, you have to know someone. All your processes will be done in the UK because that's where they have the headquarters. And probably now they will merge us with probably Asia and the Middle East because they have sub-regional heads like CEOs, local CEOs. So if they merge us there, all your document will not be processed in Nigeria, whereby you might be feeling that probably you will not be accepted. Shoot your full figure, let them see your financials, let them see what you have done in the past, your track, and then probably you'll be fortunate.
But what kind of relationship should you have with the Nigerian bank for you to be able to access, since you have to go through the bank?
Okay, as an entrepreneur, the first relationship you must have a name. You must have the drivers of the business must have credibility, because now this is not a local loan. And it's going to be a fund whereby we are looking at 6 years, 10 years. So even if you are no more, the business can repay itself. So one of the things that is very important is for any businessman to be credible, because of when opportunities like this will come up. Because if you are not credible, I am very sure any Nigerian bank will not touch you because of their own integrity. Because number one, you could access standby letter of credit lines, you could access other various types of loans you could access, but you will need a local guarantee, and that must be your bank.
And you know, you talked about the NPR.
Yes,
NPR.
of course.
So when you're now going through the local bank,
yeah,
does that not feed in, even though you have, you know, a softer interest rates from the international funding?
Yeah, the problem with Nigerian funding is we do 90-day, 1 year. We don't do 5 years, 10-year lending. And then it's only when you lend 10 years, 5 years, you could do what we call projection. And that's why for any political power now, we tell you that they want to do 4 years, and probably they want to do under 4 years. It's because of planning. It's much more easier for you to have a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, than for you to just have a 1-year plan, and before you even understand the business, you are gone. So it's much more better for us to assess long-term funding. Even if the first year, if you are making a mistake, by the time you do 2, 3, 4 years, you'll have gotten it right, and then you start making profits.
And that's what I'm saying, that because if businesses still have to go through the local banks, does our macroeconomic indices here, such as our NPR, doesn't it fit in? The bank will also need something out of all of this.
Yeah, what the bank will need is, I said you must have a track. Somebody that wants to do investment.
Don't they charge any interest or something?
Well, I don't know how that they might. They might, because of for administrative purposes. They might. Because normally, even if you have taken money from Bank of Industries, once it goes through the bank, there will be a mark. And the mark is to pay salaries, to pay other people that will be running costs. So there might be a mark, but the markup will be very minimal. Because if you are borrowing funds from abroad, probably you are borrowing $10 million at, let me say, 7%. What is 7%? When if you are coming to Nigeria to buy, you are borrowing at 25%. So it's much more easier with the spread. Even if the Bank Nigeria puts 2%, that's just 9%. You are still home and dry. If you flog the $10 million in 2-3 months, 2-3 years, 4 years, you will have gotten it right. Because what normally kills Nigerian business is you want to buy some equipment in dollars, you source for local currency, you buy. After a while, when you want to repay, dollars short is gone up. But if you buy, if you are bringing funds in dollars, you know that most of the things you want to do, especially for your fixed assets, you buy directly through with dollars. You buy directly with dollars. So you will have hedged against a lot of issues. Then when you are repaying, you just make sure that some components of what you'll be doing will be dollar-based, so that it will be easier for you to repay the loan.
So this for you is a good opportunity for the private sector.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity.
And you don't see bureaucracy being a hindrance, since, I mean, it's mostly outside the country.
Yeah, bureaucracy might not play a major role because all the documentation will not be done here. What Nigerian banks will just do is get your documentation, then you forward to where they will assess it.
And then on the other hand, you have this private sector, and they have to get these loans and operate here. We'll be talking about comparative advantage, overhead costs. Of course, they will still have to face those realities.
Overhead cost here is low, and I'll tell you what I'm saying.
Overhead cost in Nigeria is low?
Is low.
Wow, okay.
It's low if you want to compare it to other places. All our people going to America, London, is because they believe that with 1 hour work, they will make more money. So here, overhead is low. And that's why Chinese people come here. They have several factories.
So what people say, when you put the need for infrastructure, especially power, into your overhead costs, it's not low.
Power is huge. Power is huge. But all you are going to base everything on is, when we are talking of the long run, for most equipment, you don't shut down equipment. So if you don't shut down equipment and you maximize what you have, in the long run, you will be making money. It's only the businesses you are doing, if it's a business whereby there are times that you shut down. Once you don't shut down, and it's a continued process that you're doing, every day you turn in something, you turn out something, chuck out something. At the end of the day, you'll be making profit. Because everything is a function of what you buy is what you sell. What you produce is what you sell. And the more you produce, because we have a lot of population in Nigeria, the more you produce, you sell to Nigerians, you sell to neighboring countries.
Well, I must say, this is a new notion for me, that overhead cost is not expensive in Nigeria.
It's expensive, but it's not the way people claim it is. Because if it's very expensive, all companies will have died.
Yeah, yes. But that's why even manufacturers have complained of their stockpiles, their goods, inventories, being left fallow, because they obviously have to pass on the cost to consumers. And consumers' purchasing power has reduced over time. So, I mean, they're not able to purchase as much as.
Let me say, somebody getting money is into agriculture. He gets crops. If he gets to a point whereby he cannot sell his crops, then he will start to now bottle them, do packaging. Because everything that's going to happen is that when you have money, you have better ideas to do other things. What started packaging industry? It was because of wastages. So if I have a mango plantation and I discover that in a particular season I could only sell probably half of what I produce, then that shows I have to have a mango plant, a mango bottling plant, so that I can process and probably push to other markets.
Yeah, but I mean, even having the processing plants, you also need capital for that. You need skills and labor for that also.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Assuming you get this fund, you start a mango plantation, and you feel that your mango plantation within 1-2 years that you have checked, people don't buy them within that year, that half of them get wasted, then that's why I'm saying you cannot start a mango processing plant, because you know that you can only sell this to the market that you have, but there is another market that you can preserve those for. Off-season, then you sell.
All right, so you're saying that this private investment of private sector funding might actually encourage value chain, value addition. Thank you so much. Yeah. We do hope so. We do hope so. Thank you so much for your time and your views, Mr. Ayode Jonigogi, the managing partner at Escrow Wealth Investments.
It's my pleasure. Morning.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, talking about diversification of Nigeria's economy, a lot of things going on, a lot of conversations going on. I'll tell you about it after the break. Please stay with us. Nigeria's journey to reduce the reliance on crude oil hasn't started today. It started many decades ago. How much have we done? How much benefit have we had? That we've had the private sector participation. Now we have economic zones saying that they do have a role to play. Well, I had a conversation with the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Lagos Free Zone, Mr. Adesua Ladoja, at the just concluded Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan, and she told us what they are doing to contribute to the diversification of Nigeria's economy.
If you are an investor in Nigeria and you invest through the free zone, your export of goods from the free zone is CIT exempt. It's a tax incentive that essentially gives you an opportunity to be able to develop your products, right? And also create import substitution for the government and value-added services. Now, what makes Lagos Free Zone very unique is the fact that we have a deep sea port embedded in the industrial park that is Lagos Free Zone. This has a lot of advantages for the persons who are in the free zone. It means that your raw materials, you can get them readily available. It means that if you are export-driven, you can export your goods. You can export your goods through the deep sea port, and it means that your clearance of goods, right, through the port is on a very fast track. In fact, we are doing 48 hours, we are doing 72 hours, as compared to if you are in the customs territory. Business is that for you to be successful as a business, you need to be free from all those concerns that typically you will experience. And what do I mean? The issue of power, right? The issue of utilities, the issue of infrastructure. You just want to come, do your business, make your profits, pay your taxes, and just go ahead. There's ease of regulatory processes as well, because we're able to bring all the relevant regulators together as a one-stop process so that you are able to focus on what your work is. If this is done and replicated in numerous forms, the diversification that we are looking for in the Nigerian economy, from oil to non-oil exports, will be easier for us to achieve. And in fact, unification of us in the African continent.
Well, I hear it's really expensive getting into these zones, and it's not free at all.
Okay, so it's good that you said that it's not free, because a lot of people, when they hear free zone, they assume that everything to do with what we are doing is free and that you don't pay anything for it. Nothing could be further than the truth. In fact, the best way to describe us as special economic zones, not free trade zones, right? And yes, it comes at a cost, but it is a cost that it's a good cost, because it's a cost that means that you get value for money, right? If you've seen the development in the Lekki economic zone over the last few years, you will agree with me that there's been a lot of improvement in the state of the roads, in the provision of power. For instance, in the free zone, we have power, compressed natural gas. We've built a power plant that now will be having piped natural gas soon. These are things that will make your facility easier for you to run. Now, if you were doing this on your own, you can imagine how much money and how much effort and time they are putting into this thing that you are doing. When you're in the free zone, we take care of all those things for you. We liaise with the customs on your behalf for clearance of your goods. You will pay, but it is good value for money that we are giving you.
So while you help your customers or your clients in dealing with the challenges in the zone, they still have to deal with the realities, that we have in the on the outside, the bigger Nigeria.
What we say to you is that we hold your hand through the process from the beginning to the end, right? And what are these issues? A lot of times you just need to have an understanding of the regulatory framework of whatever business or industry that you are involved in. Why a lot of people have difficulties that they don't understand the rules, the regulations, the policies that affect the what they are about to enter into. Now we have research associates that work with us, that they can prepare business plans for you that will come with everything that you need to know about the field that you're about to enter into. So there are no surprises. Once you remove the element of surprise, then the rest becomes process. And we make sure we standardize a lot of these processes on your behalf so that you don't have that problem.
So with the picture you've painted, doesn't sound like there's a place for small businesses, and they make up the majority of businesses in Nigeria.
We've also been given this feedback, right? And so recently we're looking into creating a hub in the free zone for medium, small and medium scale enterprises, so that they can also have access to some of these things that can be a game changer for them, right? They also need access to raw materials. They need access to the ecosystem that we have created, because you can be manufacturing something in the zone, and there's another enterprise that is making cartons, and you have access to that. If you want to build your facility, there's an entity there that is doing steel panels. So you can imagine it's a nice ecosystem of symbiotic businesses. So we are creating something similar for small and medium scale enterprises, so that they can be close to and access these advantages that the large scale companies have.
From your interaction with these industries, what sectors would you say could be described as the low-hanging fruit for the country if we want to accelerate our diversification as a country?
That's a very good question. What we've noticed is that logistics is something that is very big, right? Pharmaceuticals, paper is also very good. Petrochemicals is always there. We are also getting a lot of interest from agro businesses, commodities. For the port itself, they are doing a lot of exports of minerals, right? Lithium, cocoa, and all. Nigeria is a very rich country. There's practically nothing that we cannot generate. The important thing is that we need to do it to the highest standard possible in a consistent manner with the support of government in terms of infrastructure like roads, and because from farm to market, from factory to port, it requires a connection, a connectivity, and that's where government needs to come in, while we then are able to help with issue of the port for you to get to where you want to go. We have companies that have heard about the zone. They've come in to set up because they want to use the zone as a hub for West Africa. So you can imagine it's really helping us to create that market that has not been available. And of course, you are close proximity to what we call the customs territory, which is Nigeria, which has, you know how large our population is. So ready markets available, opportunity for West African expansion, it's all limitless.
And then the issue of adding value to our raw materials, that's the conversation that seems to be gaining grounds now. Would you say we're making progress in adding value and not just exporting our raw materials?
I believe that we are. There's still a lot more to be done. It requires a lot of capital, and it requires a lot of deep thinking as to how can we do this to scale and at low costs, so that it is competitive at the end of the day. Those are really the important considerations, yes. We really need to incentivize manufacturers and incentivize businesses so that they are not just taking raw materials from here and exporting. you need to give them the backing to be able to look. We're very creative people, very creative country. If given the right enabling environment, we will be able to create more value into what is that we're exporting, and that way increase what we gain out of it. But like you said, intentionality is the key word. Legislation is one way to start, but I think beyond that, we really need to look at how we can help beyond just words and compelling to make sure that these people see the value in doing this value addition in Nigeria before it's exported. I think that we are beginning to see some of that, and it will only get better, and we're on the road to recovery. Yes.
The journey of diversification continues in Nigeria. Now, in other development, the government of the People's Republic of China has expressed optimism in establishing electric vehicle factories in Nigeria. The Chinese ambassador to Nigeria, Yung Dahi, made this disclosure while paying a courtesy visit to the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Mr. Dele Alake, at his office in Abuja. Mr. Dunhai emphasized the abundant natural resources that lies in Nigeria, noting that China has always placed Nigeria in a pivotal position of her policies.
We are working now to bring several brands, because currently we have over 10 brands, Chinese electric vehicles.
Yes.
We would like to bring them to Nigeria to have them to produce locally. And then I would fully agree that we should have a more added value, like lithium, like all those minerals. Because by doing this, China is going to have a stronger partner in Africa.
Yeah.
When Nigeria becomes stronger, China is becoming better.
Yeah.
Because that's the mentality for China to do in business. We will not have one trade-off. We would like to have our partner become stronger.
Response, Mr. Dele Alake states that Nigeria appreciates its long-lasting relationship with China, acknowledging that most Chinese firms operate within legal and regulatory frameworks.
All over the world, there is this clamor for transition to green energy.
Yeah.
So electric vehicles are becoming very popular.
Right.
So we want a situation where our local lithium here, the raw minerals, can also be used to produce these batteries locally here. And then go the whole hog, produce the electric vehicles. Once you have the local minerals here to produce batteries, you can then also produce the electric vehicles here. And Nigeria is huge in terms of population. So it's a huge market.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we have an upsurge in the production of electric vehicles here, it reduces our dependency on energy from fossil fuel.
Right.
So it will also make us, compliant with global trend of transiting to green energy. So it also is a win-win situation for us. So we are encouraging all our Chinese operators in this sector to start the local value addition.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Using Nigeria's lithium to produce at least the batteries of electric vehicles, that would do a whole lot to our mineral resources, our solid minerals, and of course, the overall employment and economic boost that it could bring. I wonder if Will is already using an electric vehicle. Hey, Will, good to have you on the program.
It is good morning. I'm not using an electric vehicle yet. I dream to use one EV, but I'm just wondering, if I start using it, will I get power to always charge it? Because I don't want to start running around saying, oh, the battery died on the road. I can't be at work.
Use a power bank.
Oh, my goodness. But seriously, I think it is a good thing, especially since the government has signed the Nigeria First policy, local content, promote Nigerian products, Nigerian goods. So this is actually a good thing. And you see that the price of lithium has almost halved in the past 6 months. So we know that lithium batteries can be gotten cheaper. And if it's mined here in Nigeria, not just being, exported like raw, but value added to it. I think we can make the most of it, and
I
Nigeria
don't
can
know if
be
you
better for
listened
it.
to Mrs. Ladeja's interview that I had with her, and because she's at the port, and she was telling us there's a lot of export of Nigeria's minerals, being exported. So the thing now is, can we reduce the raw export? And as the minister is asking, if the Chinese would want to come and open up an electric vehicle here, because we know even vehicles that we say are made in Nigeria, mostly they're just assembled
here
in Nigeria. So imagine if we can serve from the ground
up to the final production.
Exactly.
And
the value chain, the employment that would create.
Job creation, a lot
what
would
that
change
would do to
the
our
economy.
naira. And you know what that would do to our pride too. We'll be very proud.
I'll be walking around saying, yes.
With your shoulders meeting
Maybe my name will be one of those cards.
Okay, all right.
But let's check out what's happening in the foreign space. And it's NVIDIA. We're still talking tech. NVIDIA has introduced Lepton, a software platform that creates a marketplace for renting its in-demand AI chips. Now, cloud firms like CoreWave, Nebius, and Iota Data Services are already on board, offering developers a single hub to access GPU power. NVIDIA says Lepton streamlines what was a manual process of finding available chips. Now, major players like Microsoft and Amazon aren't part of the platform yet, but may join later. Now, Qatar Airways has reported a record annual net profit of $2.1 billion, marking a 28% jump from the previous year. Now, according to statements released today, Monday, the airline credited its strong performance to strategic global partnerships and increased agility in response to changing world events. Now, in the past year, Qatar Airways acquired 25% stakes in both Virgin Australia and South Africa's Airlink as it continues to expand its global reach. Now, the first ever liquefied natural gas LNG marine fuel facility on the U.S. Gulf Coast has secured final permits, with construction set to begin later this year in Texas City. Now, the $300 million project, led by joint venture GLBP, aims to supply cleaner marine fuel to LNG-powered ships around Houston and Galveston, with deliveries expected to start in 2027. It marks a major step in the push for greener shipping, with backing from President Trump's administration to reduce reliance on Russian gas and support U.S. energy exports. Now, still in the U.S. President Donald Trump says he's ready to visit China for direct talks with President Xi Jinping on trade and foreign policy. This follows a temporary 90-day tariff truce between the two countries, with both sides lowering import duties to ease tensions. However, Trump still warns that higher tariffs could return if partners don't negotiate in good faith, according to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Now, Thailand and Indonesia, Southeast Asia's two largest economies, have agreed to strengthen trade and investment ties as they elevate their relationship to a strategic partnership. The two nations also pledged closer cooperation on tackling cyber scams and drug trafficking, both of which have become growing regional concerns. The announcement marks a new phase in bilateral relations, with leaders from both countries committing to deeper economic and security collaboration. Now to France. France President Emmanuel Macron says France has secured a record €35 billion in foreign investment at its annual summit with global CEOs. The announcement comes as France faces economic headwinds, including slow growth and U.S. trade tariffs. Macron says the new pledges show investor confidence in the French economy. The government hopes that deals will drive growth and jobs, especially in sectors like tech, energy, and manufacturing. Digital bank Revolut says it will invest over €1 billion in France. Speaking of investments in France, and apply for a local banking license as it expands its European footprint. The UK-based fintech announced the move at President Macron's Choose France summit, pledging to create at least 200 jobs over 3 years. Revolut is also setting up its Western European headquarters in Paris, reinforcing France's push to attract global tech and finance firms. Now, speaking of summits, the EU and the UK and the EU have agreed on a new deal to improve trade, security and cooperation. The move comes as part of Monday's UK-EU summit in London, which aims to improve relations 5 years after Britain left the bloc. Now, some deals like the fishing rights have been extended to 2038. We've seen border checks, ease on doing business, Both sides will also work closely on defense and migration. But looking at what's happening, the agreement includes regular talks, joint support for Ukraine, and simpler travel for Brits using EU e-gates. Now, does it mean the UK is getting closer to the EU again? And if so, what about Brexit? To help us unpack this, our London correspondent who's in Geneva, Juliana Olayinka, joins us this morning to break this down. Juliana, good morning. It's good to have you join us from Geneva. I hope the weather is good there, sunny, shiny, and bright. Well, let's talk about what's happening. The UK and the EU appear to have had a breakthrough in talks, and major stumbling blocks post-Brexit seem to have been removed. It's been called a reset. Can you talk to us about this agreement and the agreements reached so far?
Good morning, Will. And as you quite rightly said, good morning from Geneva. I'm actually looking at live pictures now from central London, where we've just seen Sir Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, greeting Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, as well as Antonio Costa, the European Council President. Really symbolic gathering and pictures, because, as you quite rightly said, it has been a really tense relationship over the past few years, particularly, of course, with the Conservative government and many of Sir Keir Starmer's predecessors, who, of course, wanted Britain to be as far away from Europe as possible. But as we know, the entire world has changed so much in the 9 years since we had that Brexit vote. 9 years ago it was, when 52% of the British population voted to leave the EU. But we know so much has changed. We've had a global lockdown, we've had global wars, and now we've got Trump 2.0. So the world has changed. And I think Sir Keir Starmer has realised that, look, we've got to reset relations with our closest trading partner. If we look at all of the data that comes out of the Office for Budget Responsibility, basically the government, the UK government's own statistician, you can see that, you know, we have been worse off since that tumultuous divorce. And with Trump 2.0 and the threats from Putin, I think now European leaders, as well as Britain, realise that they're actually stronger together. So we do have this meeting at Lancaster House today. We've got some really big names there, plus, of course, representatives from the 27 member states of the EU. Major topics are going to be about fisheries. Fishing has been a huge bone of contention between the EU and Britain, mostly with pressure coming from France and Emmanuel Macron. Basically, the French wanted access into Britain's waters. And that has actually been confirmed this morning, that the EU will have access to Britain's waters. So that's one issue to discuss. Of course, defence and security is going to be major, because it doesn't look like this war between Ukraine and Russia is going to end anytime soon. And we don't know if we're still going to get the support from the US. So I think it's really important that they bolster that. But something else that's quite significant, and I think more so for the European side, is this free movement of people, which, again, anybody that was watching the Brexit fallout knew that was a major issue. And so there appears to be some sort of agreement on a youth mobility scheme where university graduates and young workers will be able to move freely from the UK to the EU. So those are the main areas up for discussion today, and we'll wait for a news conference as soon as they finish with those details, Will.
Okay, thank you so much, Juliana, for pointing out that we're correct. In 9 years after post-Brexit, I did say 5 years. Thank you, Juliana. But some have said that Prime Minister Keir Starmer is making a big mistake, that there's been a lot of compromises on the side of the UK, not a lot from the EU. What are the concerns here, Juliana?
Well, sorry, you were absolutely right. It is 5 years, but it's 9 years since the vote. So we went to the vote on the 23rd of June in 2016, but we actually officially divorced in 2020. So you're still right, as you always are. But no, of course, this is a huge gamble. Why? Because we know that the biggest gripe for Sir Keir Starmer at the moment is Reform UK, which, you know, rightly or wrongly, some would describe as an anti-immigration, Eurosceptic party led by the man who led the charge for Britain to leave the EU in the first place, Nigel Farage. And we've seen their polling, we've seen their results. They now have a new MP in the Palace of Westminster. They did spectacularly well in the recent local elections, you know, basically putting a nail in the coffin of Kemi Badenoch's future as the Conservative leader. And they do not want closer ties with Europe. Also, as well, we're hearing some sound bites from the Conservative Party this morning, also a bit nervous about this close encounter. So let's see how you know, the public take it. Again, there have been some feelers about what has been agreed already over the weekend and very early this morning, but we're not expecting to have an official statement from EU chiefs and Sir Keir Starmer until after lunchtime. So it's still all to play for, but I think body language, rhetoric, symbolism is going to be very important. Sir Keir Starmer appears to be a master of that game now. So let's see how he's going to appease the public. But I just looked at some polls before coming on air, Will, and about only 30% of the British public, according to YouGov, still think Brexit is a good idea. So I think most people now do understand that for the UK to be safer and to be more prosperous, you've just got to be closer to your neighbour.
Of course, you know, it's a love thy neighbor as thyself. You know, we can't just, you know, the closest person we'll run to in trouble is our neighbor. So if we separate ourselves from our neighbor, how do we get help? But looking at businesses, is there going to be any change for businesses already doing business like post-Brexit? Would there be any significant changes post this agreement? And what should we expect from the UK markets today?
Well, absolutely. I think those changes are really important. We know that, you know, SMEs, which are the engine of Britain's economy, they've been struggling. They've been struggling significantly because there has been so many rules. Lots of the adjustments have been pushed back, but the red tape is very thick and it's very bureaucratic. It got very petty in the past few years because everything had to be signed and checked and removed from lorries, and so there were miles upon miles of queues at the border. That's what is expected to start ceasing because of this fisheries deal. So I think today the big announcement is going to be on fisheries and the fact that Sir Keir Starmer has opened up British waters. And in return for that, I believe the EU are now going to reduce the amount of checks on goods coming through the border in Calais. This is, you know, fundamental because, of course, it reduces the cost, particularly at a time when we know trade is so expensive because of the new Trump tariffs. So I think fisheries is going to be the main thing, and hopefully that will be a win for businesses. But one of the issues with Britain's relationship with the EU was it was just so technical and just so much detail. So hopefully we'll be stripping back from that detail and just making business simple.
Thank you so much, Juliana Olayinka, our correspondent in London, but currently in Geneva. We'll appreciate for the World Health Day. You mentioned that. So we look forward to having that discussion on Thursday. Thank you so much, Juliana, for joining us on Business Morning.
Thanks, Will. Thank you.
So, Ini, you heard about, you know, this EU is like a man and a woman getting divorced. After getting divorced, they say, oh, no, I think we're better off together. We shouldn't have left each other in the first place. Let's go and all our, you know, come back and, you know, renew that marriage license that we had.
I think the issue of Brexit, Will, is one that I wonder if it will ever see, you know, an end.
True.
First of all, some of the terms of Brexit are still being discussed.
Of course.
When it comes to trade
Fishing
and
rights.
movements.
That's one of the waters. Is one of the point of contention.
And now the world is changing, as Juliana said, and the UK is seeking
more trade partnerships with other
people.
people.
And this is a market that was obviously free for them to participate when they were part of Europe.
Yes.
And now they have to start looking for papers and permits and
you
all
know,
of that.
and in terms of youth mobility, you could see people, youth from EU that could come into, you know, UK. For now, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, remember the early years of Brexit? I couldn't believe it. There was actually fuel scarcity in the UK because the drivers who used to, drive the trucks and articulated vehicles for supply mostly had been termed illegal immigrants, and so they couldn't do work there, or they had been sent out of the country, and so the country had to suffer when it was in Nigeria.
Don't worry, husband and wife come back like, what's happening here? What's on the table, please? Let's bring the terms. Do you have land, the property?
Well, I don't understand your husband and wife issue this morning. I really don't.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you, to be you and Laddie,
okay,
at 1 p.m. All right, just before we go, let's refresh your memory on how the market closed on Friday or for the week. Last week, it was a positive market, 0.9% in the green, retaining that 109,000 level. There you have it there, 109,710.37. Equities was 68.953. Hopefully, this will be built on by intraday. When we will be back, I will get, maybe, fingers crossed, we'll do 110. We'll see that. Activity was green for last week, and then for the counters, it was all green, from banking to consumer goods. Consumer goods has really been on a very high drive. It might be attractive to investors. Maybe it's too late. Maybe you want to wait for, a bit of profit taking to reduce. But we had more than 4% in the green for consumer goods last week. Industrial goods was also positive. Insurance is back on a roll. We lost sight of it for a bit. The penny stocks that were building up, well, we lost sight of it for a bit, but they are back now, at least for last week. Oil and gas was also up, but they're not getting a lot of attention at this time. But we'll see what happens at intraday, even as we speak. Market is open. Yes, market is open, and investors are making decisions one way or the other. We will be here to give you updates, and should be here with Laddie Williams for Business Incorporated at 1 p.m. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Enjoy the rest of your day.